us from living our life of faith. Right? So the first thing we talk about is fear, right? We talked about how fear has this natural tendency to kind of keep us from living our life to the full, and most specifically, it makes us turn in on ourselves and kind of just focus solely on ourselves, right? So then we talked about individualism, right? This hyper preoccupation with the self, right? To make life all about us, right? And then along with that, we talked about society around us, right? We talked about our culture of waste. So what do we do when our life is all about us? We get as much stuff as we possibly can, and then when that stuff's not cool anymore, it's not useful to us, we pitch it to the side. We talked about how this goes all the way and it reaches even our relationships, right? And so we make friends who might make us cool, right? Or get us in with the in crowd, and then when they're not useful to us, we set them aside as well, okay? So we talked about that element of the culture of waste. The last thing that we talked about was the culture of conformity, all right? How even though the society that we live in asks you and tells you to do whatever you want, whatever you feel is right for you, at the same time that same society says, yeah, but do it all this way. Do it all the same way. Live life the same way. You know, the same shirts make you cool, the same shoes make you cool, the same phone in your pocket makes you cooler. Right? So we talked about how those two messages are at odds and they can't really reconcile with one another. Okay? So today, we're going to talk about things that help us overcome those things. All right? So what I would say, kind of lifestyle that helps us overcome those big obstacles to living a life of faith, we can use the acronym FRESH. Right? I would say if we live a fresh life. So the first thing is faith. Right? We got to have faith. The second thing is respect. And you're going to see how that's interchangeable with love that we talked about. Right? The third thing is endurance. The fourth thing is scheme. The fifth thing is hope. So we're going to take a look at those and how they combat each of those four obstacles that we talked about earlier. Okay, so the first one, faith. So all the elements of this fresh idea are important, but this first one is kind of takes the main stage because it really sets the tone for everything that comes after it. Okay? And faith here doesn't mean an irrational belief. If you talk to the people around you and they ask you, well, what do you believe in? And you say, well, I have this system of beliefs, you know, I'm a Christian. And sometimes they might say, well, yeah, you have your pretend friend. The atheists today are big on saying things like that. You know, you have your imaginary friend and he kind of helps you get through things when you need him. Right? That's not what we're talking about here. We're not talking about a credulity, right? Or a belief or a God of the holes. That when we can't explain something else, then we believe in God, right? We're not talking about a God that's somewhere far off. Right? We're talking about a God that's here and now. And this isn't contrary to rationality. It's not contrary to our reason, right? Faith isn't sub-rational, it's super-rational. So if we look around at the world around us, we can see that everything's created with a certain order. We can see everything has a purpose, including ourselves. And then we can kind of reason from that there must be a higher order, there must be a higher power. And so that's where our faith comes in. Okay, it is a step beyond reason, but it's above, not below. Okay? So faith means a couple of things. It means in a belief in a God who created all that is, right? And it's a trust that this God that created everything desires our absolute good, unconditionally. Okay? For us Christians, it means that we have the faith in the God who sends his Son because he loves us so much that he desires to be one with us. Okay? So that's why St. Paul talks about faith as a protective shield. It protects us from those elements that tell you, no, this God is just an imaginary friend. You don't have to listen to that. Right? Because that's all play pretend. This faith protects us from that kind of thing. It serves as a shield. And so you can see how faith really sets the tone because it creates that protective barrier. Okay? And it really gets us to see beyond ourselves. All of a sudden that fear that traps us in and makes us only think about ourselves, it gets taken away, or that wall of fear starts breaking down because now we have a God that directly intervenes in our life. And our life isn't about us. Right? It's about the purpose that he created us for. Part of this faith is having trust in that purpose. So faith combats fear, because we do have that trust, and it also combats that individualism, because it all automatically, to have faith is to be open to that God that created us with that purpose. So the second thing is respect. And respect is a consequence of faith, right? We can think about respect here as being really similar, almost the same thing to love, or the Christian ideal of charity, right? So if we have a faith in a God that created all things in love, and created all things with a purpose, then we're going to respect His creation, right? We're going to love His creation and care for it, right? We're not going to use it for our own purposes selfishly, but we're going to truly be stewards of His creation. And that goes beyond, it starts with our relationships, but then it goes beyond to all His creation, right? So respect here means loving. It means loving the Creator first, right? Because everything that we receive from Him is a gift. It means each other, loving each other as unique instances of His reflective image, okay? That is in each one of us. We talked about the Imago Dei a lot, right? It means loving ourselves, but not in a selfish way. It means loving ourselves with the purpose that He created us for. It means loving ourselves because we are created in His image and likeness. Okay? And then, like I said, the rest of creation. So Paul talks about how faith has the power to move mountains. Right? It moves out of the way those obstacles, but if it doesn't have love, what are you? What does Paul say? You guys know? You're nothing. Right? You're a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. You're just making a lot of noise. Right? It's love that puts faith into action. It's love that brings that faith and allows us to live that life of faith here and now. It incarnates that gospel message that we hear every weekend. Okay? So respect battles individualism, right? It has to. Right? It tells us that our life is about the other. It's about God first, and it's about loving each other and helping each other become the people that they were created to be. So it breaks us out of that individualism right away. And it fights against the culture of waste, right? Because now we can't just consume things for our own personal pleasure and then discard them, right? We have to treat them as stewards if we love the creation of God. Right? We have to treat everything with the purpose for which He created it. Okay? And it also fights the culture of conformity. Why? Because now we're not going to look at each other and say, listen, you all got to be the same way. You all got to dress the same. You all got to think the same. You all got to talk the same. You all got to walk the same. Right? No. Love looks at the other and says, I want you to be the person that God created you to be. That's what I want for you. I want the absolute good for you. So it breaks us out of that culture of conformity. And it doesn't say everybody has to be the same. It says everybody should have the chance to be the person that God created them to be. So our third element is endurance. Okay? Because after we start living that life of faith in love, it's gonna get hard for us. Right? We're gonna be up against a culture that asks you to live life a certain way, and you're gonna be kind of trying to walk the other way. Everybody's gonna be moving the same direction, and you're saying, no, this isn't right. I'm gonna fight against the tide. A lot of times living our life of faith and love is like swimming upstream. Right? We're fighting against that current, and it takes a lot of energy and a lot of strength to keep going. Okay? So, we can add to this, that the purpose that you discern, that's going to be our next step, for your life, it's going to take time to develop. Right? We're going to have missteps along the way. Okay? We're going to fall down. We're going to fall short of the purpose that God created us for. Right? We're going to have to fight to get back up and keep on going and moving forward to reach that purpose that we've been created for. Okay? So this is why Paul talks about endurance. He says, we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance. And endurance produces character. And character produces hope, which will be our last point. Okay? But character here, endurance produces character. If we fight through that, if we have that faith that we do have a God that created us with a purpose, we're going to fight to get to that purpose. We're going to fight to live that purpose in love. Okay? That's what he talks about character there. He also says in another place that every athlete exercises self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. We're not fighting for the stuff here and now. We're fighting for life eternal with God, right? Complete unity with Him. That's the crown that we're fighting for. He says, well, I do not run aimlessly. I do not box, or I do not shadow box, beating the air, but I pound my body and subdue it, lest after preaching to others, I myself should be disqualified. So even Paul, he's sharing the gospel with everybody that he possibly can. Once he heard this gospel message, he decided everybody needed to know this yesterday. Right? This message was so important. This good news was so important. Everybody in the world had to hear. But even he, who knew this message so well, he said, I got to fight to keep living this every day. Right? I got to fight to live all that purpose that God created me with. So this endurance combats the culture of conformity, because now you're not just going to go along with the tide, right, and be carried away with what society asks you to do. But because of that faith and that respect, that love that you have, you're going to fight through that. You need to fight through that. Okay? Endurance does that. Endurance helps us do that. So the fourth thing is scheme. And scheme kind of sounds like I'm going to do something mischievous type of thing, but that's not what I mean here. So first, scheme means to discern your purpose in life. And this takes some time. This takes a lot of prayer and a lot of reflection. Okay? To discern what it is that you've been created for. Okay? It also means to plan or set goals as you look forward in life. Scheming or planning, setting goals, helps to keep you from going off on a path that doesn't really lead to anywhere. It helps you avoid dead ends, or from pursuing something that doesn't really contribute to each other's good or to your own good. Okay? It keeps us focused on that purpose for our life, which we discern. That's part of this scheming. Okay? So, Paul says in Philippians, not that I have already obtained this, or am already perfect, but I press on to make it my own, because Jesus Christ has made me His own. Brethren, I do not consider that I have made it my own, but one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind, and straining forward to what lies ahead, I press on toward the goal, for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. Paul discerned what his purpose was. Paul saw, through his interaction with Jesus Christ, what He had come to do. Paul saw that God wanted us all to be one in His Son. Right? And so he fought every day to live that kind of life that produced that kind of unity with God, not just for himself, but to answer that prayer that Jesus had, that all might be one. That was Paul's desire. Right? He wanted to meet that goal that he discerned. So we need to set goals and work to meet them. Okay? You may fail at a given step, which is where endurance comes back in, so you got to get back up and keep going again towards the goal. Right? Even Paul tells us here in Philippians, he hasn't gotten there yet. But he's trying to keep distractions aside so that he can keep moving forward. Distractions are going to come in from time to time, whether it's a person, whether it's a thing that we kind of try and chase after. They're going to come in. But then do we let the endurance and our faith come back in? Right? To keep up and press on, stretch out towards that goal that Paul talks about. So scheming helps you overcome fear. Why? Because you know there's a plan. Right? You've discerned that God has a purpose for you. You've discerned the purpose God has for you. And you know there's a plan for you, so you can keep moving forward. You don't have to be afraid. Right? You move towards that purpose. It also breaks you out of the culture of conformity. Why? Because we all have a unique purpose. I'm not here to do the same thing as any one of you. You guys all have something unique to give. Right? You can't question that, ever. The discernment process, the scheming process, helps you see that. Right? We pray, we interact with Jesus, and He says, this is who I want you to be. This is who I created you to be. And after you discern that, you're not going to be afraid. Right? You're not going to give in to the culture conformity that says, you ought to all be the same. You're going to believe that Jesus Christ, God the Father, through the Holy Spirit, have created you with a unique purpose. Okay? And it's going to let you break out of the culture of waste because you're not willing to give up on it. right? You're not willing to just throw that purpose away. You're not willing to use your life for anything but that purpose that God created you for. So our last one is hope, and it serves as a real capstone. You guys see there a picture of an anchor. And the Bible is fond of talking about hope as an anchor, right? And through the first 4 elements, we've seen that you have every reason to be hopeful. That's what our time together has been, right? Giving you a message that says you've been created in a unique way, right? Only you can do what you're created to do, right? And not only that, but God's here with you to see you through that. You have every reason to be hopeful. Okay? So in Hebrews we hear that, so when God desired to show more convincingly to the heirs of the promise that in Jesus will be one with him. Jesus came to save us. The unchangeable character of his purpose. He's not going to go back on that promise. He made an oath. And we have this as a sure and steadfast anchor of the soul. A hope that enters into the inner shrine behind the curtain where Jesus has gone as a forerunner on our behalf. You have that promise. You have that promise that you've all been created for this, to be one with God. And it starts here and now. Okay? Hope overcomes all fear. Okay? It draws on everything that's come before. Faith, living that life of love. Hope gives impulse to all of these things because you're not going to give up. Hope's going to play right into that endurance. It's going to give you hope to carry out those plans that God has for you. Reach those goals. Reach for those goals even when you fall down. So live a fresh life. We've seen how incorporating faith, respect, endurance, scheming, and hope into our lives can help us overcome the major obstacles we face today. Right? Those obstacles of fear, individualism, the culture of waste, and the culture of conformity. Okay. You are meant to live life to the very fullest. And that's what these little reminders, the acronym FRESH, try and help you to see. Right? We've talked about the life of love that God calls us to. These are little reminders to help you live that life, live that kind of life. We have to have that faith, that hope, and that love. We have to have faith and hope in that love that God has for us. And what does Jesus say? I came not to judge the world, but so that they would have life to the full. Right? That's what he wants for you. We have to have trust in that. We've talked about this a couple times as well, but this fresh life draws on the idea that you're all created uniquely in the image of God, and that because of that, each and every single one of you, without exception, is intentional. You're created on purpose with a purpose. You're unique. Nobody else is like you. You have something to give to the world that only you can, and you're beautiful. Right? No matter what the world says, because you reflect He who is beauty. You reflect the God that created you. Okay? These reminders of this fresh life help you to trust in that and kind of give you reminders to help you live that. Okay? So if you live a fresh life, if you live that life of faith, love, endurance, setting those goals, trying to reach them, you live a life of hope, you'll be a breath of fresh air to the world. Right? You're going to change the world around you. Right? You're going to bring life to the world the same way that Jesus brought life to the world when He came. Right? And united us to God. Reminded us that we're all created with a purpose. The first purpose being to be one with God forever, but to make God's life present here and now. Make sense? Okay. That's all I got.